The Barrow, Book 2, Blackheart. The Temple of the Hun. The upper reaches of dying Dania. The 11th of Ascension. In her dream, Erin was swimming naked through the bay by her home city of Berina. It was night, but she could see the familiar docks of its shipyards ahead. But the swim was a struggle. She was trapped, struggling, because the bay was filled with piss and shit and the God knows what else, and she was in danger of being dragged beneath its foul surface. It was like a pit bog or a quicksand trying to swallow her up. The stench, the foul smell was everywhere, the vile feel of it soaking her to the very pores, in her mouth, her nose, her ears, her hair. Corruption, pestilence, infection. She could feel it all around her, in her, filling her bones, her vulva, her belly, her lungs. She vomited, wretched, trying to keep her head above the surface of the sea of excrement. She could see the dock ahead. Somehow she had gotten closer. She felt a surge of strength, of hope. There was a man on the dock. As she got closer, she could hear herself calling out for help, choking on the slurry through which she swam. It sounded like her voice was coming from 1,000 yards away. Finally, the man on the dock turned, and she saw that it was Ian Godwin. He had an expression of fear and horror and disgust on his face as he locked eyes with her. A wave of guilt washed over her. I deserve that look, she thought. He raised a great curved bow, fitted with a wicked barbed arrow, and sighted down at her. She screamed as he let loose with a twang and a hiss. Erin woke with a start to the sound of someone screaming, someone that was not her. Her hand, by reflex, bringing up her cut-and-thrust rapier and pointing it towards the door in the direction of the sharp noise. Despite the success of its first use, something about her new sword still made her uncomfortable, and when she decided to arm herself during the night, she'd put Gladringer away, tucking it beneath the mattress onto the bed board beneath her for safekeeping, and returned instead to her trusted, familiar steel. Disoriented, her mind still half asleep, she listened for a moment to low voices in the hallway of the inn outside her room. In the moonlight through the partially opened window shutters, she could see Stepjan rolling out of his bed, falchion at hand and slipping to the door. He paused for a moment, head cocked, looking back at her while he listened. She could see lamplight out in the hall through the cracks in the door frame. She rolled forward until her legs were under her and caught Stepjan's eye and nodded. Stepan opened the door and glanced out. She could see some of the others moving about in the hallway, Penguin and Josephus at the least by the looks of it. They were armed, and their faces were concerned, but there was no fear or anxiety in them, and she allowed herself to relax a bit. Josephus turned and nodded to Stepjan. It's Ian, he said quietly. In the grips of a nightmare he was. And who could blame him? Said Shaban softly. He relaxed and lowered his falchion. Who is with him now? Goes in the lump, said Pippin, raising his lantern. I think I heard the innkeep steering downstairs. Shaban nodded. Let me put on my boots, and we'll go apologize, he said grimly. After he had trudged off, boots on and falchion seized and carried casually in his hand, and the door was shut, Erin put herself a drink of water from the pitcher on the nightstand and went to the window. She opened the shutters further and stood slightly to one side, still in the shadows. In the moonlight and starlight, there was just enough light to see the pale square of the inn's courtyard and a stretch of the miser road that ran through the backwater of Lewes Mave. But the village itself was a black silhouette, She could not see any firelight anywhere, at least from her vantage. There was a walled keep that sat by the road in the centre of the village, held by one Lord Royce Luce, a noble in service to the Earl of Hertford, once on Dumgrail, and the night porters there might keep fires going during the night. She had not actually missed Therapoli until that moment. Even in the darkest of night, there were usually lanterns and firelights somewhere in the city, a reassurance of human presence in all that inky black. Their destination at that point was the town of Girdif, and the Temple of the Hunt that could be found there on the edge of the terrace wall, an ancient wood that stretched up into the heights of the Jar Edwins. Durace had self-seriously suggested they detour through Abelderan and Dunnerden and kill some nameless along the way, but with so many wounded and injured amongst them, that was generally thought an unsound course of action. Josephus had added the final clincher that night. "You'll have kicked over a hornet's nest, Blackheart," he said quietly to Stepjohn and Erin later, where it was just them and Durace still awake. "Every nameless in the West is going to be trying to figure out who cracked open the barrow of their beloved Azharat and brought Glandigir back into the world. And if it turns out there's a coven waiting for us in Dunnerden, well, that's the last place we should be headed right now." He nodded at Erin and the sword at her side. "Best that this prize is kept out of sight for as long as you can help it." So in the morning they had cut east through the hills on an ancient track instead of returning directly to the Mise road and an uncertain reception at Aberdelan. They had moved slowly, partly out of necessity because of the wounded they were transporting and partly to give them time to cover their tracks as they went, watching for anyone following. Flint Gower had finally awoken from unconsciousness, though he was groggy and weak, and he had stayed strapped into the stretcher they had built for him. Fortunately, he hadn't seemed to remember much of the preceding days. He had just faded in and out, nodding and smiling whenever he saw a familiar face. They had waited until dusk to actually come onto the road into Lewes Mave, and this time fortune had smiled on them a bit, as the entire first floor of rooms was available at the inn they found there. Erin had trouble falling back to sleep after Ian's screams in the night, but it seemed like everyone else did too. And she and Stepan were joined by Durace and Josephus, and they talked quietly through the darkest part of the night, with the others cycling in and out as they steered and then grew tired again and retired back to their rooms. The next morning saw them in Volwal. Goes wanted to let the Rooses know that Fulric was dead, as Stepan hoped to speak to Fulric's cousin, but they discovered that the cousin had drowned in the river a couple of weeks prior, soon after Goes and his crew had disappeared into the Devil's Tower. "Not a coincidence," Goes said, grimly and probably needlessly, as they were all thinking the same thing. So a family, so recently mourning, was set once again on its vigils for the dead. They all joined in the prayers and offerings for Fulric's 7 days, and then they were on the road again, crossing the bridge to Hertford, and then turning north up the river to Lograil, drawing curious glances all along their route. As the afternoon grew long, they passed through East Girdif and then the outskirts of Girdif proper. Erin craned her neck to see the Lord's Tower looming over the walls of the town, but Jepan was insisted on the temple and paid it no mind. The path they were on took them a bit further north, past rolling farms and a broad expanse of pasture by the river, up towards a forested rise, the leading edge of the Tyria Wold. Nestled at the top of the rise was the Temple of the Hunt. Erin had never seen a temple to the old religion before. Back in the Aurian east of the Middle Kingdoms, worshippers of Iera and the old gods stayed hidden and made their prayers and offerings and forbidden sacrifices in private and in secret. But here in the Western lands, the rite of the divine king did not hold sway quite as strongly, and a certain tolerance of the old ways was part of the culture, particularly here on the edge of wild woods. The temple rose above them, a massive set of carved and ornamented edifices, capped by domes and a high bell tower. She got the impression of several monumental buildings all connected and pushed together. Tree-lined walkways of flagstone and set led up to the imposing recessed doors. A fountain for purifying travelers was set to their right by an ornate outbuilding. "How old is it?" she asked Stepan as they dismounted. Porters and robed priestesses were emerging to assist them, setting the wounded in their stretchers on the ground beside the fountain and preparing to take their horses around the stables in a side courtyard. "Over 1,000 years old, which I suppose is young for the old religion," said Stepan. "It was built during the days of the golden realm of Anather, as the launching point for their hunts that would take the Atheri into the western Daunian lowlands. Now the hunts go in the opposite direction, into the woods, and are just as often for men as for animals of the wild," said Durace, as he and Josephus came up behind them. For in its way, this is a temple of war, where we gird ourselves against the Asarites." "This is a temple to Aja in all her aspects, and to Yera, Queen of Heaven, and her great court," came a woman's rich, melodious voice. Erim turned to watch a slim Danyan woman, of indeterminate age but an aura of great wisdom approaching, dressed in the white chiffon of a priestess. Several other priestesses, marked by the same age's quality, followed behind her. "War is but a small part of those aspects, though some might insist otherwise, particularly those who see nothing but a riven ruin and the end of all things wherever they go." Durace coughed and bowed. "Forgive me, Lady Megesia. The War of the Woods has merely been on my mind of late." "I was not talking about you, Sir Durace," the woman said with a smile. She turned to Stepan. "'Tis always an honor when you visit us, Master Stepan, and bring with you the memories of your mother. Greetings, in the name of the goddess." Erim had a hard time stopping her eyes from rolling back into her head. It always seemed as though Stepan knew someone wherever they went. Stepan bowed. "La benedicia deles deas hiera cosmopia, and agia kinigosura tu now, Lady Megesia," he said. "My mother will be overjoyed that we meet once again." They embraced slightly and kissed each other on each cheek. He then greeted the other priestesses in the same way, naming them Celia, Daria, and Ephraim. He turned and gestured to Erim. "I believe this is the only one of us who is a stranger to you. This is Erim, originally from Berina, sole surviving companion of our expedition into the Baal Mall, and a slayer of the Galadriel of the Devil's Tower," added Durace. That brought sharp, appraising glances from the four women, and Erim found herself blushing. Stepan showed Durace an annoying glance. "Erim, may I present Megesia, High Priestess of Aja the Huntress, whose temple we now are visiting." "Just a bit of luck, my lady," said Erim, her mind drifting to the still unfamiliar weight hanging at her hip. She gave a short bow. Up close she could see that Megesia was older than she had first thought. There were faint lines by her eyes and mouth, and faint hints of grey in her black hair. But she would be hard-pressed to hazard a guess as to how old the priestess was. 30 years of age? 40, 50 older? These women seemed ageless. "We lost 3 stalwart men to the Galadriel, so I'm afraid there is little reason to find joy in its defeat, except that it did not claim the lives of yet more of you, and still others yet to come," said Megesia with a small and knowing smile. "Their deaths should not prevent you from the celebration. Their deaths are the reason for your celebration. You honor them and their sacrifice when you claim your victory, and name them as those that fought and died by your side. Do not deny them that gift, Erin gave a stouter, deeper bow. I will not, my lady. Majesia glanced over the rest of the bustling group in the courtyard. I see that you have some amongst you grievously injured, both in body and spirit. Sheba nodded grimly. Ghost Threepenny and Flint Gower have been through a great deal, and will desire purification. The same is true for Ian Gandwin, but his ordeal was far worse, for he was in the furthest clutches of the Galadriel, and has seen naught but darkness, and desired nothing but Aj's swift arrow for many days. Sadness entered Majesia's eyes. We will do our best. Sheban bowed again. I had vowed an offering to Yera Fortuna and Aja the Huntress if they brought me someone who could bring war to Durace, and they did so. I am here to fulfill my vow, though another may have already made an offering in my name. Emerin Tarlan, chief warden to Lord Naeras. The priestess named Celia chimed in. Indeed, just so. I bear witness that Master Emeril made the offerings in your name after finding Ser Durace. Stepan smiled. I will make them anyway, for not only have the unquiet dead received due burial and their just prayers, but men who faced a sure death yet live, and a great thing of evil has been thrown back into the pits of the six. He paused. I will not only thank Emeril, but bring word to him of some import. Can someone be dispatched to find him? As hard as that may be, if he's in the field. Fortune continues to smile on you, for he is in Girtif now, with Lord Naeras, and not in the walls, said Celia. We can have him here later today, bearing his other duties. I will send runners. I'll go along to find him, said Josephus. I was going to take word of Lyle's father that he is no longer with us. I was the one that recruited him into our little band. I'll take Penewin and Dimer with me. They'll want to see their folks too. Tell Liam and the rest of the family that I will come and visit them and join them in their prayers, Durace said. Josephus nodded and walked away after bowing to the priestess. I did not see Lyle halting amongst you, so I suspected he was one of your 3 losses, Majesia said quietly as she watched him go. His father often made offerings here for his son's safe return. Durace bowed deeply to her, and his voice was chastened. Then I have failed both him and the goddess. Lyle was the only local. The others were Paul Tyne, son of Nina Fane of Tambray, and Aidan Luce Othering from amongst my men. And Gauze had lost Thomas the Greener, Fulric Roos of the Wolwal Rooses, and Pelham Saveson. We will offer prayers for their 7 days. We would pay for the mourners. Blackheart and the lamp, you bring us so many tasks when you are together, Majesia said with a sigh and shake of her head. Best for all concerned that you stay apart. And so, under Majesia's direction, the priestesses and their temporal assistants were dispatched and organized to many tasks. Bathing and purifying Ian and Gauze and Flint, and tending to their many grievous injuries. Beginning prayers for the dead in the temple shrine to Geniche, queen of the underworld. Helping with the offerings that some of them wanted to make to the various other gods and goddesses of the temple, and finding old Emeril Tarlan and fetching him back to the temple. As none of those involved her directly, Erin found herself temporarily at loose ends, staring up at the temple's great entry archway, 20 feet wide and almost 30 high, and fidgeting, her off hand slowly feeling the decayed leather of her new sword's grip. The priestess named Ephraim approached her, smiling gently. Master Stepan said you were from Berina, so I assume you were raised in the cult of the Divine King, she asked. You are afraid to enter and offend him? Erin grunted and shrugged, her voice husky. The Divine King's got no hold over me, but he's all I've ever known. The old religion where I grew up was Old wise women, growing herbs in their heart gardens and selling folk blessings and reading. So not much of a religion, really. She gestured at the great temple complex. I guess places like this might have been once been found in Berlin, but not now. Not for centuries. So it is just, I don't know, a bit new to me. Would you like to look inside? Erin thought about it for a moment and then shook her head. That is okay. Maybe some other time. Ephraim nodded. Then I shall show you the outside and the grounds. They turned away from the building and the priestess led Erin around a tree-lined path of flagstone and set that ran around the south side of the temple. They passed two small outbuildings which turned out to be an apothecary and the main kitchens, and then rounded to the back of the building where they found a broad open courtyard with a great stone altar set in its center, right before another great stone archway into the rear of the temple. Ephraim seemed to be the youngest of the four priestesses to whom Erin had been introduced. Rather than being an older woman with a patina of youthful agelessness, Ephraim was a younger woman with a patina of experience beyond her years, despite being in all likelihood not much older than Erin herself. And when she spoke, Erin heard a voice marked by a deep faith. Agia is primarily the goddess of the hunt, and for us, the hunting of a wild animal is only allowed under her auspices. It is a sacred act that begins and ends here at the temple. Before they set out, the hunters receive the blessings of our priestess, and when they come back from the walls with the fruits of their hunt, they return here first. Ephraim indicated a tree-lined avenue that led down from the courtyard to the northwest, a straight line down from the hill crest to a stone bridge a few hundred yards away, the first of two that Erin could see over the different tributaries that fed into the Volbrae. The first river is the Tirbrae, and across it lies the start of the Utherwald, while we see it at the start of the Tiriawald. The hunters ride across the bridges, or come back on the Tyrian paths, and bring their fallen prey here, to the altar, and finish their rituals here. A trophy is always left, and for a time it is placed within the first room within the temple here. Ephraim smiled. Are you sure you don't want to take a look? It's quite something. The best of 1,000 years of hunting trophies. Erin thought about it for a moment or two, and part of her mind flashed on the odd sculptures made of bones and body parts that found in the Devil's Tower. She shivered. No, I'm all right. I am sure it's a sight. Ephraim began walking again, indicating that they should follow a path of packed earth that led off the courtyard to the northeast past the bell tower. Perhaps that is best. The trophies are meant to overwhelm. You have all been through quite an ordeal by the looks of it. But sometimes we must be reminded of our role in the world, that we bring both life and death with us everywhere we go. And our present happiness is built on a mountain of the dead and the eaten. Beyond the bell tower, Erin saw the entrance to another courtyard flanked by the stable buildings. And then Ephraim led her along the earthen paths away from the temple, walking into a broad, clear avenue that pierced the tree line. Everything was approaching. Evening was approaching, and amongst the trees darkness was starting to encroach. A path that split off to the right passed through the beginnings of a large graveyard that eventually became one with the woods, the most ancient tombstones and markers interwoven with the trees and brush and vines. They slowly walked several hundred yards up the hill crest, flanked by tall strands of green elm and oak that started to mix with purple leaf plums, copper beech and purple beech, giving the leafy canopy a dark reddish-purple hue that reminded her of the Neriswold down by the Manon Mall. To Erin's surprise, some of the purple leaves also bore the sheen of silver, as though someone had dusted the leaves with a bright metal powder. Would you look like that? The civil word. It's not just a name. 1,000 yards or so up the avenue, they came up on a huge circular wall that Erin at first thought was a great curved hedgerow almost 3 or 4 times the size of the temple in width and 20 feet high. There was a break in the hedge that led inside, and she realized it was a structure of some kind. "What on earth is this?" she asked. Ephraim smiled. "This is Kulrenge." "Ah," Erim said with surprise. "Sherpan told me about this place. It's some sort of labyrinth, yeah? Tied to the standing stones at Halorenge in the Plain of Flowers somehow, right? That place I've seen. But this looked like it's made of hedges." Ephraim shook her head. "Kulrenge is a great labyrinth of stone. The stones have been here long enough that they are covered by vine and moss, and so it looks like it is a hedge maze. But no, it is made of menhirs, set so close to each other as to create walls, and at its center is a small clearing with a circle of standing stones." Erim whistled. "It must be easy to get lost in there. Looks fucking huge." She blushed. It's, pardon my language. "It is a labyrinth, not a maze. So many use the terms interchangeably," said Ephraim gently. "It's not designed to trick and trap you through a warrant that can happen. There is but a single path that leads you winding to the center. Its purpose is revelation, initiation, to make you experience a journey of the mind and spirit as much as the body, which makes this place very special to me." "Oh?" asked Erim, glancing at the priestess. There was a soft inner glow to Ephraim's skin. "Each of us is dedicated to an aspect of Aja, or one of the other gods here at the temple. Majessia is high priestess of Aja Kinigos, the huntress, and the senior priestess of the entire temple. Celia is Majestia's second, and chief priestess to Aja, the huntress. Daria is chief priestess to Hiera Cosmopia, her aspect as queen of the cosmos. And there are other priestess here dedicated to Aja in all her other aspects, and to Yera, to Jara, to Geniche, and to Amy, the morning star. And we have priests here to Akdach, the keeper of the animals, and Eliki Ilios. Meanwhile, I am priestess of Aja Toxotis, Aja in her aspect as the archer, then Aja Ebnefstis, the goddess as initiator." Erim looked up at the tall walls of the labyrinth. "Ah, so you must use this place a lot then, for your initiations and such." "I have walked in its path many times. I learned something new each time. And I have met many people at its center," the priestess said. "For all of us raised in the old ways, we are taught the mysteries of Aja, starting sometime after our 10th birthday. And once a year, at the festival of the spring moon, there's a great rite, and if you have understood her mysteries, then you are allowed to declare yourself an adult. We are lucky to have Kulrenge here, and so those who wish can walk it as part of their rites. Usually it takes a few tries, and some people wind up rejecting adulthood altogether as the years pass for them." "How can you reject adulthood?" Erim asked. You get older. You become an adult, yes?" Ephraim smiled. "You can be told you're going to become an adult and what that means, and your body can become an adult's body. The simple passage of time will answer that. But the mystery is in figuring out how it means your life is going to change and accepting that change. You have to embrace adulthood, want it, and then realize that you have already become one. If you never figure it out, if you do not complete the rites, you become something different. A third category, I suppose. Someone always caught in the moment of transition. In some ways, you are treated as an eternal child in the eyes of the old religion. You cannot become a consort or have children yourself, and many trades and labors will be held back from you. But in other ways, you may act as an adult, and as Aja is a goddess of transitions, the phases of the moon, the journey between the land of men and the land of beasts, the moment of childbirth, the journey between childhood and adulthood.
You become sacred to her. Many of us become priestesses of Agia, and we are truly blessed we are chosen to become one of her companions and join her on her sacred hands. Erin looked at her with a raised eyebrow. So, as a priestess here, you rejected adulthood? Ephraim tilted her head and pursed her lips. It would be better to say I understood that its particular paths, sex, childbirth, motherhood, family labor, death, were not for me. That a different path awaited me, a path in the service of the goddess of the heart. Erin blushed deeply at the word sex, and her thoughts were distracted for a moment until something occurred to her. I have never been through the mysteries of Agia, she said with a frown. I mean, no kingsman has. If you worship the divine king, you just turned 15, or whatever, and you're an adult. Yes, just so, because none of you have ever undergone the rites of Agia. Technically, you are still children to us, the priestess said with a small, playful smile. She turned away from the labyrinth and started to head back down the avenue. Erin took a last glance at the entrance into the vine-covered stones of the labyrinth. In the growing dark of evening, it looked dark and empty before her, and suddenly she didn't want to linger. She turned to follow Ephraim, walking quickly to catch up. So, she said when they were even on the path again, you said you're also a priestess of Agia as the archer. You must be good with a bow then. Ephraim smiled. I suppose. I heard Durasa make a prayer to her, I think. It went something like, Agia, great archer, your servant pleads, avert your gaze, Deathbringer. Close enough, I hope? Ephraim nodded. Yes, that is the invocation of Agia the archer, used by those who wish to ward off death. Many invoke her before battle or some other dangerous task. For Agia as the archer is the sudden stroke of death that comes for all of us eventually, as is Ire the archer, her companion in divine service to Geniche. They are the swift arrows, the sharp pains that still the heart and call us to the underworld. A terrible aspect, then, Erin said. But in this, she can also be merciful. And many will pray to her for a swift death, rather than a long, lingering, painful one, the priestess said gently. And that is often when I come into their lives once more. Erin looked at her with surprise. You? How? Ephraim shrugged, so the explanation was obvious. As part of my duties as a priestess of Agia Toxotis, bring death to those that wish it. Erin stopped dead in her tracks as the priestess continued to walk down the path and felt a shiver up and down her spine. For a moment she was in the grips of a flood of memory, and she almost cried out. Then she took a deep breath, looked around at the trees, and then silently followed Ephraim back to the temple.